all doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah, we're
all
doing it
the
all the
time.
time. Exactly.
It's just we're not always cognizant of it, and we're not always desiring of what shows up.
Right.
That bad relationship that keeps showing up, it's because your field is focused on I'm going to be in the wrong relationship every time. That challenging financial situation, that challenging health situation. All of these things are exactly the same process because it's not complicated. It's straightforward, but it's not easy.
Welcome to this episode of the Breakthrough Code. I'm Tom McCarthy, and I'm very excited to have, he's going to crack a smile in a minute. I know he is because he smiles all the time, but I'm very excited to have my friend Daniel Mangena on with me. And I say my friend, I consider him a friend. I just met him back in January. Though. Yeah, we were down in Mexico, and I'm part of a group that he was invited to be part of. And I think it was his first meeting, and he comes right in and you know, he's hugging everybody and just bringing this positive energy. And when I saw that, I'm like, you know, I got to get to know this guy. You know, and so we had lunch, I think, or dinner or something like that. And we talked several times, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again. He's in Dubai right now, so he's been not in the US where I can see him locally, but I'm excited to have him on. He's a very successful, I call him a young man. He's younger than me, but very successful in business, and then very, very successful in the business that he's doing now, which is really his passion, which is helping people find their dreams and tap into those dreams and go bigger than they would have. And he's done that himself, and now he's teaching lots of other people to do it. And today I'm going to ask him to focus in on a few things, but one of them is prosperity and money, because he's been very good at that in his life, and I know that he can share a lot with all of us on how to do that. So, Daniel, great to have you on.
Thank you for having me, man. Really great that we could connect and have this conversation today.
Yeah, outstanding. So let's go back to your earlier days, and I don't know a ton about it, but I've read a little bit about you, and I know that you were diagnosed with Asperger's, a lighter form of autism at age 20, which I was telling you earlier, you're like the last person I would think, because you always have that smile and that energy, and you're always looking to connect with people. And people with Asperger's often are very, very successful because they're so focused, but they don't tend to have the social skills. So talk just a little bit about your earlier life and how that set you up for where you are right now.
Yeah. So actually it was 27 when I was diagnosed. And the way that I got to the diagnosis was that I've been suffering from severe social anxiety, severe general anxiety for my entire life up until that point, including crippling insomnia, as in not sleeping for days at a time, sometimes weeks at a time. And I was going through a particular bout of insomnia, and I went to the doctors because all of my traditional ways of breaking the cycle of insomnia hadn't worked. The chamomile tea wasn't working, the over-the-counter sleeping wasn't working, turning off the electronic devices. And the doctor actually went ahead and prescribed as much as he could of the strongest sleeping medication that he could actually, prescribe for me.
Wow.
He said, you can have one will knock you out. If not 1.5, you can't take more than 2. I took 2 and I was still wide awake. I went back to the doctor, said, look, I took 2, I'm still wide awake. And he said, I can't give you any more medication. If that doesn't work, I have to refer you to a therapist. And it just so happened, and I'm so freaking grateful for this, the therapist that he referred me to, just the one who just happened to be on the list that day to get the referrals, specialized in working with adults with autism as her specialist area, even though she was carrying general referrals from the NHS. And so when I walked through the door, she picks up the sign straight away that, oh, this is someone that's neurodivergent, operating in a neurotypical world. She didn't tell me for about a month. She was just sort of doing different tests and quotients with me and taking me through different exercises to really nail it in before she had me do the actual official assessment, at which point it came out that, yeah, I'm on the autistic spectrum.
Yeah.
So that was that.
And so, and how was that an advantage for you finding out? Like, I know that part of what I'm sure you teach and what I teach is that things are always working in your favor. Like,
exactly.
How did that, and I know you had something at age 20.
Yeah,
right?
That's when I lost my first
we
business.
can talk about, but when you look back on those things, and maybe talk about what happened at age 22, just to set us up to know a little bit more about you. But how did you use those things? So talk to us about age 20, and then talk to us about how you use those things to become who you are now.
So I was blessed with the curse of early success with not many speed bumps.
Okay.
And so what that meant was I taught myself to make computers when I was 13 years old, and I was making money selling those. I had a tuck shop, and I was that kid that my teachers at school like, oh, he's going to be successful. You know, we're going to put a pin on him. And, you know, I made it to the honors roll at my school, the permanent honors roll plaque on the wall. I was the senior prefect. I had the head teacher's prize. And I was able to successfully turn around and create a business at the age of 19 that got me to a couple of $1 million. Okay. Unfortunately, though, you know as well as I do that wealth isn't just about the money that's in your bank account. It's the money that you can hold in your mind and the money that you can hold in your field. And if you haven't had the experience of it in your field, or more to the point, if you've got contrary energy in your field and you don't have the habits, actions, and behaviors of wealth, which is why 90% of lottery winners go back to exactly where they were within 5 years, it won't stay.
Right.
And so for me, I was a cocky young kid that thought he knew everything. I didn't have the right licenses for my business. And so the government came in and closed the business down and took all the money that was in the business. Now, I was 20 years old. I, unfortunately, didn't listen to that very nice notification from God that it's time to slow down and maybe get some advice and direction, and went off, you know, straight away and went off and started another business and got that to a couple of million quid in a few years. So it's about 1.5 years, 2 years. Yeah. The second time, everything gets stolen from me. Because I tried to be smart now in the arrogance of my youth and put everything in other people's names. Oh, the government aren't going to get me this time because I know everything. And so for me, I was that really weird kid that was reading books like Think and Grow Rich when he was 16 years old, right? I wasn't out drinking and speaking to girls. Maybe I should have been, right? I was reading books like Psycho-Cybernetics. I even read like Joe Carbo's Easy Way to Riches, the Midas Method by Stuart Goldsmith, Charles F. Harnell's Master Key System. And I was able to successfully apply those principles to create what I was able to create. But knowledge without experience isn't wisdom. And when there's no wisdom in the mix, there's always going to be a completely different experience. And that's what happened to me. So I ended up in this really, really dark place. So the second time I lost everything, I didn't have the backdrop of success to hold me from seeing the truth that maybe I didn't know everything. And the damaging thing for me at the time was that so much of my identity was wrapped up in this illusionary thing that I had, that I knew everything, that when the evidence came forward that I didn't know everything, I didn't have any identity left. And that left me in a place where I literally thought, Tom, the only thing that I had left to do was to take my own life. And I sat there committed, not in and the TED Talk that I did, unfortunately, they refused to publish it because of the title. And I actually opened up the TED Talk by saying, you know, every time that I'd heard stories about this moment, like, I was just in this really calm, really, this is the most logical thing to do now. And I'm so grateful. And the reason why I tell this particular part of the story and how it links into the Asperger's is because of how my brain is wired, I physically don't have the capacity to react. My brain can only function in sequence and function in structure. So I sat down and said, okay, I need to strategically look at what my suicide is going to look like. And as I went through the options, none of them made sense because none of them were sure enough. And I was feeling like such a loser at the time that I believed if I made a suicide attempt, I'd fail. And I just couldn't fathom the idea of failing at my suicide on top of everything else. And so I stopped and said, how can I ensure that I succeed at my suicide? And realize I need to work out what was wrong with all the conscious creation that I was doing and fix that. And so I went off on the journey to understand what had gone wrong with my ability to create outcomes with a negative intention. But because of the quality of the inputs that I was taking on, I ended up in a positive place. And so when I get to, it's hilariously gallows humor, it's hilarious. So when I get to the 27 years old and I get this diagnosis, I'm in the middle of this whole journey of uncovering everything. I'm like, my goodness, it's because of the Asperger's that I went through everything structured the way I was. It's because of the Asperger's that I had this complete laser focused, blind sighted way of looking at the world. And so I was able, and I'm so grateful to Dr. Helen McEwen for the way that she guided me through this process, because she helped me to see, she immediately didn't let me go into the shadow. She pulled me straight into, these are your superpowers, these are your strengths, and these aren't weaknesses. These are areas where you just need a little bit of support. And I was able to grow and thrive from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. What a great story. And I think there's so many people that maybe don't get to the level that you get to, but they get to a point where they're looking at life and like I remember in 2015, I had chronic fatigue and I was just so inflamed and I wasn't getting better and I thought I was dying and no one could figure out what was wrong. And I didn't think about taking my life, but life was not fun to live anymore. And I had some depression, which was super scary because you don't feel anything. And I remember like I didn't feel like eating. I didn't feel like, it was only for like a day or two, but it was so scary because I've never felt that way in my life. But that was an incredible building block for me going through that, because I really looked at it, like I looked at it like life is going to hold me down until I learn what I need to learn right now. And when I shifted that focus, I've learned so many things, in that 8 months that I was like stuck in bed because I was reading. And I've always been a reader like you. I remember reading a book, you might not remember this one, but Illusions by Richard Bach, who also wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. But I remember reading that little parable. And it's about how everything's just an illusion and we're creating, we are creating.
You'll have to text me the link to that one because it sounds fascinating. I want to read it too.
Super short little book, but I remember reading that when I was, 15 or 13 or 14 or whatever, and it kind of freaked me out. Like my life when I was 3 years old got upended when my dad was killed in Vietnam. And after you have something like that happen, or after you have something like what you had happen in your 20s, life is not black and white anymore. You're bringing up terms like the field. Some people might not know what we're talking about, but there's a field around all of us, right? That is influencing us and creating and manifesting or blocking. And let's talk a little bit about, well, actually, let's get into, so you've made a lot of money. I know that you left a job a business where you were making a lot of money because your passion was something different. It's what you're doing right now. What caused you to do that?
So I like to look at my life as like a trilogy series, right? And right now I'm in book 3. I feel like there's a book 4 sort of merging now, especially since I've become a father a couple of years ago. But book 1 kind of leads into that kind of dark time in 2008. And then book 2 is the unconscious journey out of that into sort of the realization, oh, hang on, maybe there's something going on here that's positive, and really getting cognizant of that. And then book 3 starts on the 13th of January, 2018, at about 7 o'clock in the morning. And so anyone who's listening, who's not familiar with what the weather's like in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at 6 o'clock in the morning in February, let me paint the picture. There is ice on the ground. I have multiple layers on. I've got hot pockets in my gloves. I've got earmuffs, scarf, woolly hat, and I'm at a meditation retreat, and I'm doing a walking meditation. And as I'm doing this walking meditation, it's really interesting that the retreat had finished, and I went with big expectations of the retreat, and I didn't really get out of it what I thought I was going to get out of it. There was a lot of distractions happening. And so I get there, and it's the morning after the retreat, the morning that I'm going to be flying back to the UK. I said, I'm just going to go and do another walking meditation this morning. So I got up, put everything on. It's cold. I don't want to be out there. I'd love to be in my warm bed. I'm doing this walking meditation. And about halfway in it, I find myself, and that's the only way that I can describe it. I'm getting gooses even saying this now. I find myself in the middle of what I can only call a fully immersive virtual reality experience. Now, to understand the importance of this, since about 2 years before that, I kept getting this nagging, clawing at me that all of the journey that had happened in book 2 maybe had another purpose to it. But you got to remember, my big failure at 20, I was trying to help people. Right. I'd managed to navigate into a situation now where, having lost everything the second time, having to trust people, I had a business that was making me around about £100,000 a month, really clean, I'm working a few hours a week. I'm traveling. I'm having fun. I've got a lovely house in North London. I've got a couple of nice watches. I'm a young guy, you know, I'm dating, you know, things are going well. And my life worked. And, you know, there's a lot of people that get to a point where they want to do this kind of thing that we do. And then, oh my, I was empty and there was a hole in my soul. And I thought I was living my best life, Tom. So the idea of me challenging a very happy little bubble didn't really work for me, but the noise kept getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And I was saying, but it works. I kind of like nice things. I'm kind of good. Yeah, there's some lessons here. And I've been working on this kind of book idea. And maybe I was going to do a podcast, but everything works. And so I was kind of pushing it away. And in this experience, in this meditation experience, it's like I was teleported into the future to see that everything that I was holding on to could not shine a light of any kind to the experience that was waiting for me, to the joy that was waiting for me, to the fulfillment that was waiting for me. As happy and as fulfilled and as much as everything worked where I was, there was so much more if I just said yes, shared my story and allowed that gift to be a part of my experience.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. When I was a stockbroker, so I was in the financial world, my first job out of school. And I did really well. I was one of the top people in the firm. I was you know, making good money. I had a couple of houses. I was 20, 23, 24 years old. I was winning trips to different places. And then, but I just was like, this is, but I knew this was not what I was meant to do. And I remember I didn't want to go into work one day. I had all these great clients and I didn't watch TV, but I turned the TV on and I see this guy being interviewed about a book he wrote. And the book was called Unlimited Power. And his name was Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And I'm like, and he's talking about, you know, you can choose how you feel. And I'd been already, you know, I believed all that stuff. But here's a guy, you know, he's a little bit older than me, like on TV talking about it. I'm like, wow, I never knew you could do that. So I got the book. I read it, you know, in a day or something. It was a pretty thick book. And then I flew out to one of his events and then I'm like, this is what I want to do. And literally I left, people thought I had like fallen in. At first they were really concerned, like he's going to California. Uh-oh. You know, he must have hit his head on a curb or something. My best friend was crying when I left. I mean, people thought I was, you know, just nuts. But in my heart, just like in your heart, you knew, like you were given a vision of what could be possible. And along the way, we've done other things, you know, we've owned restaurants and things like that. But my core passion has always been this. And you know what, maybe I could have made more money doing other things. I've done just fine, but it just feels so good to do what we do, right? To see people light up and become more than what they thought they could become. And I know that's your passion too. So
yeah, 100%,
I know exactly
100%.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So talk to us about the money game, book, The Money Game, but talk to us about maybe some processes for people that are struggling with money or making money or finding the ideal career or path for them that also, by the way, like you're very successful in what you do. You left something that was successful. I left something that was successful, but because we followed our passion and our dream and our bliss, we didn't sacrifice anything, right? We got rewarded there too. But talk to us about maybe some ways people listening can tap into what you figured out about how to win the money game.
So I think one of the things that I invite people to remember is that everything in our reality is something that we can have a relationship with. This doesn't mean that we have to go into the woo-woo of it. It doesn't mean we have to go off into magic mushroom land about it. No disrespect to the mushrooms, but I'm just saying. But if we just consider the possibility that everything that we have in our reality, we can relate to, and we just start playing with the idea of this career or the idea of me being in a career. If I was on the other side of the relationship that I'm putting out to this, how would I feel? This idea or this desire to be in a romantic relationship, if I was sitting on the other end of this desire, based on what I'm putting out, how would I look at it? This money, this financial goal that I've got, if I was on the other side of this relationship, as if it was a romantic relationship, and I was looking at the way that I was being treated on the other side, how would I feel?
You're talking
And
about
even if we just
the money, if you were the money
yes,
looking, yeah, that's
yeah,
an interesting way of
yeah.
looking at it. Yeah, okay.
So, and because one of the things that has been scientifically demonstrated to be, you know, pretty consistent is the rules of how reality functions are not complicated, but they're not easy. It's very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
Everything that is a thought,
Mm-hmm.
which can be measured,
Yeah.
becomes an emotion in our body, which
Sure.
impacts the chemistry in our body, which changes the way that we think.
Yeah.
Our unconscious habits and behaviors most of the time are dictating what we're doing in terms of actions, habits, and behaviors. And you get what you do on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
All of this together becomes who we are. Now, what I see oftentimes is someone wants to have more money. Okay, I'm going to have a vision board of all the things that I'm going to spend the money on. Nothing else changes. Or I'm going to pray every day at my mosque, my synagogue, my temple, or my church, or my whatever for the thing. Or I'm going to be on my knees in meditation for 10 hours every day, visualizing and connecting with the spirit of money. I'm going to go and do all of the plant medicines, but nothing else. Or I'm going to read all of the books. I'm going to do all the visualization. I'm going to remove all the limiting beliefs, or I'm going to have all the good money habits. But each and every one of these are just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
If I've got all of the energy and I've cleared all of the blocks and I've got all the magical gizmos and crystals, but I don't believe I'm worthy of it, I'm not going to have the actions, habits, and behaviors that are going to lead to it. Or even if I get it, I'm going to lose it. I can have all the habits in the world. If those habits aren't met with an emotional relationship, an energetic relationship, and a belief system that supports it, I'm not going to be able to keep it. And so when I look, taking all of this into context, how I'm showing up in terms of what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing in my mind's eye as beliefs and stories, and how I'm behaving, and I flip it and look at it from the outside, ask yourself, would you want to be in relationship with you?
Yeah.
And ask yourself honestly, if this was your loving partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or whatever, and they were treating you the way that you're treating that thing in the context of your behavior, would that be a healthy, nourishing relationship that you'd want to stay in?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a really unique way of looking at it, particularly with money. I mean, you know, it's probably easier for people to do it with a romantic relationship. Like, you know, would I want to be in a relationship with me, but with a more intangible thing, but everything's just energy, right? But
Exactly.
you know, the energy of money, you know, let's say someone wants, you know, $4.5 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, with $4.5 million, that energy of that money, why would it want to be with you? You know, like
exactly.
right. And I'm not saying it shouldn't want to be with you, but have you developed yourself into that person? That $4.5 million will go, oh my God, like I want, where have you been? Like, I want to get here as quickly as possible.
And the thing as well is that we need to remember that if this is a romantic relationship with two humans, humans have got limiting beliefs and unworthiness that has them sitting in unhealthy relationships. Money is dispassionate. Your dream is dispassionate. That career is dispassionate. The energy of that relationship is dispassionate. It's not going to sit around taking abuse from you. It's like, oh, you don't want me to be here. Your wish is my command. I'm going to go to Bob down the road, who is in alignment. Oh, you don't want the idea that I've given you time and time again for you to bring that gift into the world? Well, I'm going to go and give that idea to this person. They're going to have the inspiration. They're going to start that company. They're going to start that movement. So when you understand that this human idea of sitting in a relationship where you're not wanted isn't something that anything outside of, look at your pet, right? Like nothing else other than humans does that. And so if you just consider, am I even showing up as someone that's demonstrating that they want it to be around?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And with money, there's a really quick thing I'll share. So an old girlfriend of mine, she had a really strict rule that if anything chipped, cutlery or crockery chipped, she'd throw it out. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, I'm not allowing any foothold of lack or scarcity to be present in my experience. And since that time, I've really been mindful of that. I don't shop in the discount aisle. I don't ask for discounts. I don't try to get it less than. I always go for the best that's available. Why? Because I'm sure, and this is not going to be the same for everyone. This is my process. Everyone has to find their own process. But this is how I consistently show up and demonstrate to reality, God, the universe, source, whatever, that I'm ready. I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the abundant life. I'm ready for the dream. I always show up and glow up as the version of me that's already in a healthy relationship with the thing that I want.
Yeah, I love that. And also I like how it's consistent throughout the day. So one of the things that I read an article about you this morning, and one of the things you mentioned, you went to a Joe Dispenza program.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love what Dispenza says. You know, he says, like, you know, you meditate for an hour in the morning, right? And you get feeling really good. And then the rest of the 15 hours you're not doing anything consistent with what you just did. And then you're wondering why it's not happening.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. And so, you know, we have to, in the book, The Breakthrough Code, you know, the first thing is focus in on less things, like less big things, but really go big. And then it's upgrade your story, you know, upgrade the way you think, upgrade the way you feel, upgrade your belief system, let go of what's not working anymore, which, you know, in many cases you have to let go of quite a bit. And I think we're always having to let go. There's never a time in my life where I think I'll ever be like, hey, work's all done. Here I am, baby. Everything's perfect, right? Something's always showing up to let go of. And then pack your day with the right kind of actions. Like, I love it. You know, you don't shop in. Again, not that that's right for everybody.
For everyone. This is for me, but this is for me. This is I know myself, and I know if I'm shopping in a discount aisle, that's incongruous with the idea of me being abundant. So I don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, I won't fly anything less than, you know, if I'm flying commercial, business class or first class or
same.
Whatever's the highest, you know, that you can get. So exactly. And there was a time back in the day where, you know, I could get upgraded, I could wait, I could see if it's going to work. I'm just like, what am I doing? Right? Come on,
just do the thing.
Yeah,
just do the
exactly.
thing. And it's wild what happens when you go out and show your commitment. It's scary. I'm not saying it's not scary.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying to do this in a delusional way.
Right.
Like very intentionally going out in a space of not belief, knowing that I'm going to meet the resources to make this happen. And it always happens. It always does.
You're right. I mean, because then you're creating that field that brings the resources to you. You know, I've told this story before, but I told my son, he was working on a deal to raise, well, about $1 billion, but they needed a couple $100 million more to close the deal. And I told him, just program your mind. He goes, where am I going to find somebody? He's a young guy, right? You know, where am I going to find somebody? I said, program your mind. You're always in the right place at the right time. And so, you know, he did it. And about a week later, he calls me up and he goes, hey, Dad, you're never going to believe what happened. Like, I didn't know what he was talking about. I go, what? He goes, well, you know, I've been programming my mind to be in the right place at the right time. I've been focusing on it for, you know, this couple $100 million that we're raising. And he said, I'm walking down the street in West Hollywood and this guy bumps into, or he didn't bump into, he was jogging in the opposite direction. And he stopped right in front of me. And he said, I don't know why I'm stopping. This guy told him, I don't know why I'm stopping, but something tells me I have to talk to you. And my son was like, I go, well, did it kind of freak you out? He goes, yeah, a little bit. And I said, how old was he? He goes, Dad, he's an old guy. He's like your age. Right? And I said, well, what did the guy say? He said, he asked me, what do I do? And my son said, you know, I'm an investor, and he was working in private equity. And then the guy said, I'm an investor too. He goes, look, I don't know why I stopped. Something told me I had to talk to you. I don't even run this way. I live up in Beverly Hills.
Wow.
If there's ever a reason we should talk, let me know. And so they talked literally maybe a minute, and he gave my son his information. My son had no idea who he was. My son gets back from his walk, looks him up. The guy's a billionaire and runs a $4 billion private equity fund. And he calls him up. Hey, I think there may be a reason we should talk. And then my son gets his senior partners and they meet for lunch with this guy. The guy goes, I really like the deal. He goes, but I want someone else that really has a lot of expertise in this area to see it. Can we meet? And they meet for dinner 2 days later. And each of those guys commits $100 million to that deal. But my son was creating that field of I'm always in the right place at the right time with a special intention, a breakthrough result of raising this money. So I get it. And you've done that. I mean, you've done that so many times. I've been able to do that. Everyone's been able to do that to a certain extent. Just they may be manifesting the things
That's what I was going to say. We're all doing. We're all doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it all the
time.
time. Exactly.
It's just we're not always cognizant of it, and we're not always desiring of what shows up.
Right.
That bad relationship that keeps showing up, it's because your field is focused on I'm going to be in the wrong relationship every time. That challenging financial situation, that challenging health situation. All of these things are exactly the same process because it's not complicated. It's straightforward, but it's not easy because oftentimes we're locked into the pattern of doing it that way.
Yeah. And we're locked into the pattern of believing that I mean, you and I aren't, but most people are locked into the pattern of believing the only things that really exist are the things you can see. And what we're really talking about is working on the unseen, right? The things, but they're real. They're just as real. They're just as real, right? And they're available, but we're just not, people aren't just bringing them into the realm of reality, in the realm of 3D reality, because they're not making them real enough on the inside. One of the things I talk about, and I know you believe this too, everything's created twice, first on the inside, then on the outside.
And then on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. And so
the blueprint and then the manifested outcome.
Yeah. But I love the way you talk about, think about the thing that you're wanting to attract. Like, well, if it looked at you, what would it say? Like, I don't know. Right? Well, then who would you have to become where they'd go, oh, wow. Right.
Exactly.
That's a great metaphor and actual beautiful strategy, Daniel. That is so powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Hey, what's you talk about micro shifting. What is micro shifting?
So when I first started doing this work, I went off and I was literally running around the world. I packed up my house, left everything in my brother's garage, and I had a backpack, a suitcase, and a suitcase. And I'm running around the world. I'm renting rooms and begging people to come and learn about this stuff. And then at some point, I hit a point where I realized, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, the money's probably going to run out. Like, I'm not making any money. I'm just spending. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine who he had just at the time had a very nice 9-figure exit, beautiful spiritual guy. And he looked at me one time. He just come to an event that I did in Northern California. He said, Dan, if you just let the abundance in, you could probably help a lot more people. So up until that time, people have been asking, I want to work with you. Like, can you coach me? I was like, I don't want to do that. I had it in my mind, I'm going to do these events. I'd released a couple of books by then. I'd started the podcast. This is back in 2018. And I ended up on the back of what he'd said, kind of looking at the stories that I'd been hearing from people as I'm doing these events around the world. And one of the key things that was happening is people wanted to create the life that they wanted to live, but they kept hitting the brick wall of not having enough money, not having enough resources, not having enough time. And so I made my first million when I was 19, and I used it. I made it following a formula by a guy who ended up being my first mentor, a guy called Stuart Goldsmith, who basically had created this experiment that he called the double your way to $1 million experiment. And so the science is, if you take a penny and double it 28 times with a few roundings here and there, it gets you to 1.6 million in 28 steps.
A penny.
So, right. So I did that once. I did it twice. I did it a third time, got to 120 grand. I needed the money and used it. But I was like, oh, hang on a minute. What about if I started to put together that strategy of what Stuart taught with what I understand about energy, frequency, intentionality, mindset beliefs, and what now I call my money DNA principle in terms of being in your unique flow. And so micro shifting is, I define it as a consistent series of baby steps made in the direction of a consciously chosen outcome. And the way that it works is, a lot of us come up against a brick wall and we get stuck. And the reason why we get stuck a lot of the time is because our mind literally can't see any further than where we are. And when it can't see any further, it stops us. And generally, I found that that's because people are trying to look too far into the future. Whereas we can always see one step, because the mind sometimes is like, oh, I need to make sure I can see what's going on. And so it's all about, what is one thing that I can do now that I know I can do without resistance? Because if you keep consistently doing that, you're going to be moving. A lot of people are, oh, I can't make the big step, and they stay stagnant. But as if you keep moving. And the crazy thing is then a secondary benefit comes in. Once your unconscious mind recognizes that you've had a pattern of behavior that you're only moving forward, even if you do hit a so-called brick wall, it creates a cognitive dissonance that will always be overwritten by the current rhythm, which is movement. So when you do hit a brick wall, you move through it. And so micro shifting is a way of breaking resistance, sidestepping at stuck states, and building a momentum that can lead you towards a goal. Even something as crazy as taking a penny, and with the program, we actually start with $100 and you do it in 14 steps to get to the million. And just do that 14 times, each of it a step that you can see in front of you, not the big step. It's 14 like mini projects. And it's wild to see the way that people break through old patterns of belief, break through old patterns of stuck, break through old glass ceilings, because the momentum overrides the stuck state.
That's beautiful. How do people find you and your work, your podcast, your process you just told us about right there, that you work with people? How do people find you, Daniel?
Easiest way is dreamwithdan.com. Best place to find me. Everything's there.
Dream with Dan, baby. I love it. That's so cool. Dreamwithdan.com. And then all your information's there. Like
everything's there. Social media,
courses,
books,
social media.
Everything's there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the podcast, what's that called? Is that Dream with Dan too?
It's Do It with Dan, and I've got another one called Beyond Success. Okay. Yeah, Do It with Dan's the podcast, and Beyond Success is more for entrepreneurs. We've got the Beyond Success podcast.
Oh, you have two podcasts. Oh, great.
Yeah,
okay.
I've got two.
Lots of resources, everybody, to be able to keep in touch with Daniel and soak up his wisdom. I was so impressed when I met you back in January, and I love what you're doing. I think you are, somebody that is not even close to the peak of what you can do. And I'm just honored to be able to watch you grow and support you in any way I can. But thank you so much for being with us, Daniel. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave everybody with?
It's just like we all have. I mean, Tony, I'm a lover of Tony's work too. And he talks about those big, massive shifts. And we all have the potential for big, massive shifts, but we all have the capacity to make those running steps up to making that big leap. So make those little steps today, knowing that you will get that big leap at some point in the future for sure.
Beautiful. Great job. Thank you so much, Daniel. Hope you all enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please leave a comment and subscribe, and also let all your friends know. Daniel, thank you so much. Great job.
Thanks, buddy.
Can't wait to see you in person.
100%. You too, man.